Hello and welcome to this very special programme from the University of Surrey. My name is Liz Franklin-Kitchen and I'm the Humanist Chaplain. Today we're marking International Women's Day and looking at how the university is responding to this year's theme, Choose to Challenge. I'm joined today by Jo McCarthy-Holland from Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, with whom I'm proud to be collaborating on her brand new initiative to provide a safe, supportive space for people experiencing symptoms of menopause. Jo will be guiding today's discussion on the topic of menopause, and we're joined also by Hindu Chaplain Meeta Joshi, a familiar face to just about everyone on campus. So welcome, Meeta. And I'm also beyond excited to welcome our very, very special guest to the university today, Marina Bolton. Marina is Head of Organisation Development and Design within the civil service, with decades of experience and expertise in a wide range of organisation design and development methodologies, including transformational change, action research, systemic intervention, large-scale engagement methodologies, senior team and board development, and culture and behaviour change. With a Master's in People and Organisational Development, Marina is a member of the Institute of Personnel and Development and a Fellow of the RSA, and is currently studying for a doctorate in organisation change, the theme of which is compassion. Marina has recently become a menopause champion in the UK civil service and speaks openly about her personal experience, her intent being to influence policymakers to take both menstruation and menopause into account when considering health and well-being in the workplace. Welcome, Marina, Meeta and Jo, and I'm now going to hand over to Jo to lead today's conversation.
Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is a really great opportunity today for us to, I think, just have a conversation about where we're at with our work on this for women and for all of our communities where we work. And I just am really grateful, Marina, to have your presence here today to share with us what you've done in this arena. And be great just to start really with what's kind of prompted your work. So where did the journey start for you, and where are you now in terms of where you see this particular movement being taken more and more seriously within the workplace?
Let me start by saying thank you so much for inviting me along. It is a real pleasure to join you and to join your conversation. And just to say as well, Liz, I'm so impressed with how much you reeled off about me. And you were reminding me of something I potentially had forgotten too. So thank you for that glorious introduction. So this started for me when I had a kind of moment at work when I noticed I had been a woman experiencing perimenopause and then menopause in complete silence. And so I wasn't a woman at the time of menopause who spoke out or who voiced the experience I was having. I went through it silently. And in going through it silently, I held it all in, and actually kind of mentally and emotionally, it was not the best experience in my kind of personal life or working life. And there was just one moment when I had taken on a new role at work. And somebody had asked me what it was like taking on my new role, stepping into my new role. And we started a conversation where I realized I'd started this new role and I was talking about that, but I wasn't talking about the experiences I was having in work and also what that meant for me stepping into a new role. And that's when I started to talk about it. And I did it not with the intent of talking about menopause, was to talk about I've taken on this new role. Who's in it? You know, people seem to be interested in what that experience was. And so in that conversation, I then mentioned, and I was doing this at a time when I was experiencing perimenopause for about 5 years, and then kind of 3 very kind of quite unpleasant, intensive years of menopause symptoms that I didn't speak about. And that triggered a conversation in the group of people that were interested in my new role that was completely unexpected. And it sort of started for me there, which then meant actually I then, through voicing my experience, all of a sudden people came up to me and said, do you know? And they started to share theirs. And then I met this amazing person at work who said, you know, we've got a bit of a network starting up. Do you fancy coming along? And do you fancy being a champion? So I'm a senior person in the civil service. And this was a network in our very hierarchical system. This was a network of people across kind of more junior grades, and they had some senior women involved. And they said, would I like to get involved with them? And it was like an absolute yes.
Fantastic. What was the reaction from people? I mean, in terms of, there's the kind of the in-group of people experiencing those things, and there's a real enthusiasm and passion to get involved and see change. In terms of speaking to others about it, what kind of reactions were you getting from the broader organisation?
It's such a good question, and I'd like to say, you know, it was mixed and positive. So somebody asked me a little while ago, so what were the negative experience? What were the bad things that happened? And it was, well, nothing bad happened. It was just more comfortable for some than others. And I think that's what I noticed, was the level of comfort and discomfort that showed up at any time when this came into conversation. I think, so in the very first conversation, when I wasn't actually talking about menopause, but it came into the conversation, and I found that an easier way to bring it into conversation. We are talking about, you know, what it is to be in a workplace. It's what it is to be a woman in a workplace, what it is to be a senior woman in a workplace. And to do that with the absence of talking about menopause or menstruation, I think means that we leave a big chunk of what it means to be a woman in the workplace out of the conversation. So what I've chosen to do is bring it into the conversation so that it's in context. So I don't want to drag people in to say, sit there, I've got to talk about menopause. What I do is say, let's have a conversation about what it is to be kind of a female gender in the workplace. And in doing that, what I've also found is it, you know, menopause isn't, you know, we attach it to age. It is not directly related to age for some. You know, there are stories, and I've met young people who have to go into kind of medically induced menopause. You know, one such young person was 18 when that occurred to her. You know, and so I kind of found myself thinking, if I can talk about what it is to be a woman, can I embrace what it is for all women and invite them in, but to talk about all aspects of what it is for women. So that's kind of how I've approached the conversation. And I think that has led to a few places coming to say, come and talk about menopause.
So raising its profile, I guess, in a sense, and it's about making it a natural part of discussion, not hammering it home in every possible scenario, but as appropriate, thinking about it in terms of lived experience. I'm very conscious, you know, we talk about allowing people to be their whole selves at work, and what does that mean? That kind of, that sense of belonging, and these words that we band about. And so is this about, actually, we are addressing the humanity of staff and understanding that actually it crosses so many areas, so many life events and stages. And it's not just, I guess, about women. It's something that everybody needs to understand and be aware of, particularly thinking about our students, you know, and how do we meet their needs and their need for understanding what's going on in all phases of life. And as you say, these things can start at 18 with thinking about menstruation and the impact of that on women and their families and their partners. And this is all this kind of stuff we need to break down the taboos around.
Just to say, Jo, on the taboo thing, I know, so I've read, I was part authored an article for Harvard Business Review around menopause and it being the last taboo. I don't know if it's the last taboo, because I don't know what else we're not talking about. It has been a taboo, And I think there's something important in what you've just said around inviting people to create an environment where they can choose to talk about something or not feel they can't talk about something. And
I guess also not feeling that they have to talk about something. So, you know, across all areas of equality, you know, some people are dealing with issues, others aren't. And we can't kind of stereotype and categorize people, but we do want the environment to feel safe enough to share what's going on for people. And that's really, really crucial.
That sense of being able to show up, I think, when we say about bringing our whole self to work and any environment that we're in, any relationship that we're in, that's quite scary. There are some times when I think actually I don't want to bring me wholly into this today. I need a little safe space. I need a little place to feel quiet. But for that to be something I choose in the moment, rather than, like you say, to be barred from. You're not allowed to talk about that around here.
Yeah, something that you just said there, the article, I read that article with Harvard Business Review with you and Megan Wrights, and there's a third person whose name has just escaped me just as I was about to say it, but who and because I didn't know her, I looked her up and discovered that she's a voice teacher, isn't she, in musical theatre, and I think that's such an appropriate metaphor, isn't it? We all talk about finding our voice at work, you know, so not just a singing voice or an acting voice, but you know, really finding your position in a workspace. And I think that the work that you, Marina, and you, Jo, and Meeta are doing is absolutely, it's just fantastic and so needed in the workplace right now. So thank you all for that.
Thank you, Liz, as well for, you know, your contributions and just thinking about we're fairly early on in our kind of work around this area at the university, but it's so powerful to see women who haven't had a voice and actually they come together into that safe space and begin to talk and listen to other people, and you can almost see the relief visibly on their face as they think, oh, I'm not alone. I've never been able to talk about this to anybody before, and suddenly I've got license just to share and be really open and honest and seek other people's knowledge, expertise, experience, and it just reduces the stigma, the fear, and brings out the best, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And not all of us are used to sharing and being open. That leads me just to think about how we can ensure it's a really inclusive space. So I wonder, Meeta, if you have got thoughts on, you know, culturally, different amounts are shared and talked about. What are your thoughts about how we can ensure that everybody's included in this work, regardless of their different backgrounds? You know, taboo happens in all sorts of different ways, but what are your thoughts about in terms of cultural difference?
There is a lot of cultural difference, and some of the cultural practices are still practiced by our students as well. And I am also chaplain at Epsom College, so I have observed even over there. One of the cultural aspects which might have emerged as a result of we didn't have, when it comes to menstruation, we didn't have, that much of sanitary provision in the olden times. So people won't go to temple, they won't pray, and they're asked to be, sitting on the side. And that is practiced still today. So the cultural side is there, and it's not going to go away that easily. But some people practice it, some don't, because within the pantheon of Hindu deities, we have so many female goddesses. So if you worship female, why can't you go to temple then? So that's the argument they use. It is a personal choice, and I won't force if a student doesn't want to come and pray, saying that, sorry, I'm having my menstruation cycle, I don't want to come and join. It's personal choice. But to do with the menopause, I think more needs to be propagated within the diaspora, that it's not just a phase, but it's health-related issue. But so yeah, there are so many taboos and barriers which I had to deal with myself and I had to come out of it. So I am trying to encourage others as well to do the same.
Well, on that point, I'm just thinking about the need to have male champions. How important, Marina, do you think it is to have men championing this issue? Because it can't just be about a women's club talking about these things. We need to break down those barriers and make it a bit more of a norm, don't we? Appropriately, but what do you think about that?
So, so in the civil service, we've got a male champion. So there's a very senior male in our kind of hierarchical system who champions it with me and with a few others. And there's a balance to be struck, isn't there? And I think it's about what's the narrative that you want to create in the organisation, because we came at it in the civil service around, this is a workplace challenge. It's not a woman's challenge. It's a workplace challenge. It's part of the bringing, that I think, to your point, Jo, part of the bringing your whole self to work. We looked at it, and in kind of some of the work that I've done, I've looked at it in the future of work. So if you look at all of the research being done around the future of work, and you look at the kind of the demographics over time of the workforce, then what you will find increasingly is women will experience menopause in the workplace. Now, that wasn't the case a few decades ago. Our working environment and the kind of cultural changes that we're kind of living with today weren't in place then. So you would still have a lot of women who weren't in the workplace. They would have left to have families. So kind of the whole nature of the change over the years to sort of equalize and become more inclusive is now surfacing something which is now going to become critically important. And in that respect, I think it's really important to have men and women, and of any gender, any sexuality, or any way that you present yourself in the world, is to be able to present yourself fully and wholly, and be able to represent others as well. So how do we do that? And so for us, it was really important to have male champions, and that has, and again, I think for me, I have been really, really taken by how many men talk to me, and how, you know, there was one young man who came to me, and his partner, his female partner, had endometriosis. He didn't know how to talk about that, and she was having her experience and not really wanting it to interfere with the relationship from what we could understand. So for him, it was like, here's a woman I can talk to who might help me to help this person I love very much. Very important to have men.
It's fantastic to get that conversation going, isn't it? In terms of compassion, I know you've done a huge amount on this, Marina, in terms of compassion in the workplace. What would you say to people who see this as a bit soft and fluffy, a bit on the edge? Why should this really be a workplace issue, not deal with it at home, come to work all sorted, and then, you know, we don't really need to be doing all this extra fluffy stuff as part of our organisational development?
Oh, you know, gosh, I could get on the box here, Jo. What a brilliant question. And so to try and keep it simple, the whole nature of the way that we live our lives can either be whole or it can be in parts. But if we choose to live it in parts, i.e. we separate, I've got a home life, I've got a work life, suggests we can kind of bracket things off, that we can push them away, and that we can choose to not focus on any one part of our whole being at any one time. Now, some people, through coping mechanisms, and something that we all do, I think, and we all learn how to be in any 1 minute, we create coping mechanisms, and all the time they work for us, that's fine. But then they start to break down, and they start to break down particularly when we start to experience things like menopause and menstruation, because you can't bracket that off. You know, as a woman, if you're sat in a meeting and you start to bleed, you can't bracket that off. You can't push that away and choose to deal with it at home. You have to deal with it there and then. Mm-hmm. And that's the point for me in particular around compassion and kind of any kind of health and well-being question, is it is unhealthy and it is unnatural to bracket that off and try not to deal with it in the moment that it's happening. And that adds, I think, to the kind of very real risk of increased mental health issues for a lot of people in doing that. And I think that for me is the core of the inclusion narrative that I think is very prevalent and one that needs greater amplification in every organisation, I think, at the moment.
Because absolutely,
Joe, but
yeah, I was going to say, because we're fully human all of the time. We don't leave our human selves at the breakfast table, then toddle off to work and be robots for the day. That's just not what life works.
It seems to me that if you had an employee who had some sort of physical issues, they don't just leave that physical issue at the door and come to work completely able-bodied and able to do their work. Because something like menopause, menstruation, and indeed, all sorts of well-being and mental health issues and circumstances are not so easily visible, that's no reason to attempt to ignore it. And I think that's why your work, Marina, is so important.
I do think there is a growing awareness that we are whole all of the time. And that we don't, but absolutely, isn't that just brilliant? And we've got an awful long way to go, I think.
Yeah. But it feels that the tide is changing, though. I think there's a receptiveness to some of the stuff that I don't think would have been there 5-10 years ago. And it's exciting that there's a movement. We're not standalone, are we? There's lots going on in lots of amazing organisations. Thinking about HSBC and some of the, and there's obviously the civil service, and we're not having to start everything from scratch. All the thinking is being done, and we are part of something bigger, which is really exciting. And yet it's making such a huge impact at a local level, which is really needed. I've got a thought about, in terms of this cultural difference, and then in terms of people's experience of the menopause from different socioeconomic angles. So I'm very struck that, if you're privileged and you've got money and you've got your fitness trainer and you've got your private health consultations and access to drugs that aren't necessarily available, how do we address that side of it in terms of the huge breadth of experience and background that we're dealing with in huge organisations? What can we do to ensure we're talking and representing everybody?
There are organizations which primarily look into communities, different communities, because I'm part of one of the organizations, Surrey Minority Ethnic Forum, and we have 45 member organizations within Surrey and borders of different ethnicity, and we have 3 or 4 projects mainly running for women, and something called Many Hands, in which we have many different activities. And I would like to bring in a 5-minute film expressing the need for how family has to come together and understand when a family member like mother is going through menopause. So I was talking to my team at Surrey Minority Ethnic Forum, where I'm one of the trustees, and it was so well received over there that something like this is necessary, because you're right, Joe, that cultural how to address each segment of BME community or each segment of different origins is a completely different ball game. You can't have blanket application because each community has their own needs, and those needs need to be assessed, has to be taken that way, and a lot has to be done because the taboos won't go, a cultural upbringing wouldn't go until it's broken, until we break the barriers.
So how do we ensure that organisations resource this, that there's a future proofing so that it doesn't disappear when that particular passionate champion happens to move on into another organisation. How can we safeguard what we're doing?
For me, it's that sense of one conversation at a time. And in that one conversation at a time, who am I talking to and what will mean they hear me? So I think I have to own that when I started, I went on a bit of a kind of a rampage campaign. There was a risk that I could take my frustration and anger into the conversation and kind of focus it all on whoever it was I was talking to. And if they were male, 10 times so, because it was almost like, and it's your fault I'm not able to say this. It's your, and it kind of isn't. It's I think to your point, Meeta, it's culturally, it is the norms that we all accept. Women accept it too. And so just if it helps for anybody, my approach has been one conversation at a time. And who am I talking to at this point? And when I talk to you, I think workforce will do it for you. So if I seed with you the thought that your future success is going to be based on a workforce that will be in excess of 50% kind of female gender, how important is this to you now? I think it's a bit more important, isn't it? So it's that for me. It's kind of working with and being, I think, paying attention and being intentional in that. That's the only way I know how to do it anyway. So I share that if it's of help to anybody.
That's fantastic. It's that sense of rationale, isn't it? That, why are we doing this? If it needs to be about a business bottom line, so be it. If it's about compassion, absolutely needs to be. If it's about our social responsibility, it's the right thing to do, then so be it. If it's about recognising our demographics and changing workforce and the fact that it's all going to collapse if we don't address some of these things, then so be it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. We are, I'm afraid, out of time. And, hopefully we can continue this conversation in other ways and on other platforms and other arenas. So, but for now, I just want to say a huge thank you to Marina for joining us today. To get more information, we have a new email address. It is menopause@surrey.ac.uk. So if you have any questions, anything that has come up out of this discussion today, or anything that hasn't come up that you think we ought to be addressing, please do get in touch at that address, menopause@surrey.ac.uk. For now, thank you so much for being with us today. Jo, do you have a final word for us?
No, just to echo your thanks. It's been a fantastic opportunity to just have a conversation, and those conversations will keep going throughout the year beyond International Women's Day, and let's hope for real change that's lasting and meaningful for everybody. Thank you so much, Marina. Thank you, Meeta.